The avoidant can handle you leaving. They've prepared for that their entire life. Their whole psychological system is built around the assumption that people leave, that relationships end, that loss is inevitable. When you actually leave, when you walk away and close the door, it hurts them, but it's a pain they understand, a pain they've been defending against since childhood. They know what to do with your leaving. They activate their defenses. They shut down emotionally. They tell themselves they're better off alone anyway. They construct narratives about why the relationship wasn't right. Your leaving fits their worldview perfectly. It confirms what they've always believed about relationships. It's painful, but it's familiar pain, expected pain, pain they have coping mechanisms for. But there's something the avoidant hates more than you leaving, something that disturbs them more deeply, something that gets under their defenses in ways your departure never could. What they hate most is you being completely fine without them, not pretending to be fine while secretly struggling, not performing moving on while still emotionally attached, but genuinely, authentically, visibly thriving in their absence. That reality breaks something in the avoidance psychology that your leaving never touches. When you leave, the avoidant can maintain comfortable narratives. They can tell themselves you left because you were too needy, too demanding, too emotional. They can decide the relationship ended because of incompatibility or bad timing. They can frame your departure as you not understanding them or not accepting their need for space. All of these narratives protect the avoidant's ego and allow them to avoid examining their own patterns. Your leaving can be made to be about your limitations, your impatience, your inability to accept them as they are. But when you're genuinely fine without them, when you're actually thriving, all of those protective narratives collapse. Your thriving proves the problem wasn't you. It demonstrates that you're capable of happiness and health, just not with them. It forces them to confront that they were the limiting factor, that their emotional unavailability was what made the relationship impossible, that you didn't leave because of your flaws, but because of theirs. The avoidant's worst nightmare isn't your anger or your hurt or your desperate attempts to get them back. Their worst nightmare is your indifference. It's you genuinely not caring anymore whether they're in your life or not. It's you being so fulfilled by your own life that their presence or absence has become irrelevant. It's you looking at them with the kind of neutral friendliness you'd show any acquaintance, without longing, without resentment, without any emotional charge at all. The avoidant can handle your emotional reactions, because emotional reactions prove you still care, prove they still have impact on you, prove they still matter. But your genuine indifference, your authentic thriving, your real moving on removes them from significance in your life, and that removal is more disturbing to them than any dramatic exit could ever be. The specific ways you're thriving disturbs their psychology. When the avoidant sees or hears that you're doing well without them, the first thing that disturbs them is the challenge to their assumed importance. The avoidant has been operating under the assumption that they were significant in your life, that losing them would be devastating for you, that you'd struggle without them. This assumption isn't narcissism exactly. It's based on the fact that you pursued them, you tried to make the relationship work, you seemed attached to them. The avoidant interpreted your effort as evidence of their importance to you. But you thriving without them proves they weren't as important as they assumed. You're fine, you've moved on. You've built a life that doesn't include them and doesn't seem to miss them. This revelation is deeply unsettling because it means they weren't the significant figure they thought they were in your story. Your thriving also disturbs the avoidant by proving you're more resilient than they gave you credit for. The avoidant often views people who care about them as weak, as overly emotional, as unable to function independently. Part of how they maintain their sense of superiority is by seeing themselves as the strong one, the independent one, the one who can handle being alone. But you being fine without them demonstrates you're not weak. You're strong enough to walk away from what wasn't serving you and rebuild. You're emotionally healthy enough to process the loss and move forward. You're independent enough to thrive without them. This strength threatens the avoidant's self-concept because it reveals you're not the needy person they characterized you as, which means they might be the one with the actual limitations. The avoidant is disturbed by your thriving because it proves their withdrawal didn't damage you permanently. The avoidant often has guilt about how they treat people, Guilt they manage by telling themselves that anyone who truly loved them would accept their limitations. But you being fine proves you weren't actually damaged by their treatment of you. You were hurt temporarily, but you healed. You processed it and moved on. The temporary nature of your hurt is more disturbing than if you'd been permanently damaged, because it suggests you were more attached to the idea of relationship than to them specifically. It suggests you can find what you need elsewhere. It suggests they were replaceable, not irreplaceable. Your thriving disturbs the avoidant because it forces comparison between your trajectories. You're moving forward, growing, building a life that's full and meaningful. They're stuck, repeating patterns, experiencing the same relationship failures with new people. The contrast is stark. You left them behind not just physically but developmentally. You used the relationship as a learning experience that propelled you toward growth. They're using the relationship as another confirmation of their beliefs about intimacy being impossible. Seeing you evolve while they stagnate creates uncomfortable awareness that you were never the problem, that their patterns are what hold them back, that they're wasting their potential while you're actualizing yours. The avoidant is also disturbed because your thriving means you're not available as an option anymore. When you were hurt or struggling after the breakup, the avoidant could maintain a fantasy that you'd always be available if they decided they wanted to try again. But you being fine, you building a life, you clearly moving forward, means that door is closing or closed. The avoidant is losing the option of returning to you, and even though they weren't using that option, knowing it existed provided security. Your thriving removes that security by making it clear you're not waiting around, you're not available as a backup plan, you're not someone they can return to at their convenience. Why they monitor you obsessively when you're thriving. The avoidant who realizes you're doing well without them becomes obsessive about monitoring you in ways they never were when you were together. They check your social media constantly. They ask mutual friends about you. They drive by places they might see you. They're paying more attention to your life now than they did when you were trying to build a life with them. This obsessive monitoring is the avoidant trying to find evidence that you're not actually fine, that you're just performing wellness, that underneath you're still affected by them. They're looking for cracks in your facade because those cracks would restore their sense of importance and their comfortable narratives about relationships. The monitoring is also the avoidant trying to understand how you're thriving. What are you doing differently? How did you move on so quickly or so completely? Who are you spending time with? Are you seeing someone new? The avoidant is studying you like a puzzle they need to solve. They can't understand how you've achieved what seems impossible to them: genuine happiness after relationship loss. Their own experience is that relationship loss leads to more defenses, more protection, more isolation. But you're experiencing loss as an opening, as an opportunity, as a catalyst for growth. The avoidant is disturbed and fascinated by this different response to the same event. The obsessive monitoring is also driven by the avoidant's fear that you'll find someone else who can give you what they couldn't. Seeing you thrive is one thing. Seeing you thrive with someone else is another level entirely. The avoidant is watching to see if you're dating, if you're in a new relationship, if someone else is receiving the love and effort you offered them. This possibility creates jealousy the avoidant didn't expect. They weren't jealous when you were together because you were available. But now that you're unavailable, now that someone else might have access to you, the jealousy is intense. The avoidant is experiencing what they made you experience, wanting someone who's not available, feeling threatened by the possibility of being replaced. The monitoring also serves the function of keeping you somewhat present in their life, even though you're gone. The avoidant is looking at your posts, checking your updates, maintaining awareness of what you're doing. This attention is a form of connection, a way of feeling still involved in your life without the vulnerability of actual contact. The avoidant can tell themselves they don't care while simultaneously spending hours monitoring your social media. The contradiction doesn't register because the monitoring feels passive, feels like it doesn't count as actual pursuit. But the amount of energy they're directing toward tracking your life proves you matter more than they're willing to admit. The internal crisis your thriving creates for them. Your thriving creates an identity crisis for the avoidant. They've built their sense of self on being independent, on not needing anyone, on being fine alone, but you're demonstrating that you have those same qualities. You're independent. You don't need them. You're fine alone. The avoidant thought these were their special attributes, the things that made them different and superior. But you're displaying the same attributes, and you're doing it without the emotional unavailability and relationship dysfunction the avoidant carries. You're proving that independence doesn't require hurting people, that being fine alone doesn't mean being incapable of intimacy. The avoidant's identity as the independent one is threatened by your demonstration of independence that's healthier than theirs. Your thriving also forces the avoidant to question their beliefs about relationships. They've believed that caring deeply leads inevitably to pain, that attachment creates vulnerability that will be exploited, that intimacy is dangerous. But you cared deeply about them, and you're fine. You were attached and vulnerable, and you didn't get destroyed. You survived intimacy with them and the loss of that intimacy without it breaking you. Your resilience challenges their core beliefs. If you can care deeply and still be okay when it ends, maybe caring deeply isn't as dangerous as they've always believed. This possibility is threatening because it suggests the avoidant has been limiting their life unnecessarily, that their defenses aren't protecting them from inevitable harm, but from potential connection. The avoidant is experiencing cognitive dissonance. They believed you'd suffer without them, and you're thriving. They believed you were too emotional and needy, and you're demonstrating strength and independence. They believed relationships don't work, and you seem open to building new ones. Every belief they use to justify their avoidance is being contradicted by your post-relationship trajectory. Cognitive dissonance is uncomfortable, and the avoidant is sitting in that discomfort, unable to resolve it. They can't make your thriving fit their worldview without admitting their worldview might be flawed, and admitting their worldview is flawed would require examining their entire life and all the relationships they've destroyed. Your thriving is creating shame in the avoidant. They're ashamed that they treated you poorly and you still came out ahead. They're ashamed that you're doing better without them than you did with them. They're ashamed that they're still stuck in their patterns while you've grown past the relationship entirely. Shame is an unbearable emotion for avoidants who already struggle with core shame about their inability to connect. Your thriving adds to that shame pile, forcing them to confront not just that they're flawed, but that their flaws cost them something precious. The shame is heavy enough that many avoidants manage it by trying to diminish you or your thriving in their minds, telling themselves you're just putting on a show or that you never cared that much anyway. The realization that you were the one who got away. As time passes and you continue thriving while the avoidant continues struggling with relationships, a specific realization begins to form. You were the one who got away. You were the person who could have been their partner if they'd been capable. You were patient enough, understanding enough, willing to work with their limitations. You offered them something rare and they destroyed it through their fear. This realization is agonizing because it comes with awareness that they can't undo it, can't get you back, can't have a do-over with the knowledge they have now. The avoidant compares every new person to you and finds them lacking. The new people aren't as patient. They don't understand the avoidant as well. They don't create the same feeling of safety. The avoidant is discovering that what they had with you was actually special, was actually rare, was actually worth fighting their fear for. But this discovery comes too late. You're gone. You've moved on. You're not available for them to try again with their slightly increased awareness. The avoidant is experiencing the loss on a deeper level now than they did when the relationship actually ended, because now they understand what they lost. This realization that you were the one who got away is particularly painful because it's accompanied by awareness that they were the problem. The avoidant can't blame you for the relationship failing. You did your part. You tried. You were willing. They were the one who withdrew, who couldn't show up, who let fear win. The responsibility for the loss rests entirely on them, and that responsibility is crushing. They destroyed their own chance at happiness because they were too scared to reach for it. That's a burden to carry that's heavier than any breakup pain from the other person leaving. The avoidant also realizes they'll carry you as a comparison point for the rest of their life. Every future relationship will be measured against what they had with you. Every new person will be found wanting in the specific ways you excelled. You'll become the idealized one who got away, the person they should have fought for, the relationship they should have tried harder in. This idealization is ironic because when you were present, the avoidant was focused on your flaws and incompatibilities. But in your absence, especially seeing you thrive, you become perfect in retrospect. The avoidant has created their own haunting, and you're the ghost that will appear in every future relationship. What the avoidant does with this realization. Some avoidants, confronted with the reality of your thriving and the realization that you were the one who got away, use it as a catalyst for change. They finally get into therapy. They start doing the work on their attachment wounds. They commit to understanding their patterns and developing capacity for intimacy. They use the loss of you as their rock bottom, the painful experience that finally motivates transformation. These avoidants are rare, but they exist. They're the ones who, years later, have done enough work that they might be capable of healthy relationship, though usually not with you, because the work requires them to fully release you and move forward. But most avoidants don't use the realization productively. They sit with it, they suffer from it, they let it fuel regret and self-recrimination, but they don't do the actual work required to be different. They might acknowledge they need therapy, but they don't go consistently. They might read books about attachment, but they don't apply the information. They might recognize their patterns, but they continue repeating them with new people. The realization that you were the one who got away becomes just another source of pain they carry, without allowing it to motivate real change. Many avoidants try to reach out when they realize you were the one who got away, and they see you thriving. They send messages asking how you are. They express regret about how things ended. They hint at wanting to try again. These reach-outs are driven by loss of access to you combined with idealized memories of the relationship now that you're unavailable. The avoidant wants to see if the door is still open, if you're still interested, if they have a chance. But reaching out without having done substantial therapeutic work means they just repeat the same patterns that ended the relationship initially. The desire to reconnect is real, but the capacity for different relationship hasn't developed. Some avoidants become bitter when they realize you were the one who got away. They can't handle the shame and regret, so they transform those feelings into resentment toward you. They tell themselves you gave up too easily. They decide you never really understood them. They construct narratives where you're somehow at fault for not being patient enough or understanding enough. The bitterness is defensive, a way of managing unbearable feelings of loss and self-blame by redirecting blame toward you. The avoidant knows on some level that you did nothing wrong, but admitting that means sitting with full responsibility for destroying something precious, and bitterness is easier than that responsibility. Why your continued thriving compounds their disturbance over time. If your thriving was temporary, if you appeared to move on but then struggled or went back to appearing affected by the breakup, the avoidant could dismiss your initial wellness as performance or as initial denial before real grief set in. But when your thriving continues, when months and then years pass and you're still clearly doing well, the avoidant can't maintain any comfortable dismissal. Your sustained wellness is undeniable evidence that you genuinely moved on, that the relationship with them isn't what you needed, that you're better off without them. This sustained evidence is more disturbing than initial appearances of wellness because it can't be explained away. Your continued thriving means you're not coming back. The avoidant might have held hope that eventually you'd reach out, that eventually you'd miss them enough to try again, that eventually the door would reopen. But as time passes and you continue thriving independently, that hope dies. The avoidant is forced to accept that this loss is permanent, that you're not someone they can return to, that they've permanently lost access to you. Permanent loss is harder to accept than temporary loss, and your sustained thriving is what makes the permanence undeniable. The avoidant also watches you potentially build a life with someone else. You're not just thriving alone. You're open to new relationships. You might find a partner who can meet your needs in ways the avoidant couldn't. Watching you build with someone else what you offered to build with them is excruciating for the avoidant. They're seeing their replacement receive what they rejected. They're witnessing someone else being brave enough to show up for you when they were too scared. The comparison between them and your new partner is devastating because it highlights their limitations and your new partner's capabilities. Your continued thriving also means you're evolving into a version of yourself the avoidant never got to know. You're growing, changing, becoming more of who you're meant to be. The avoidant knew one version of you, but that version is being left behind as you develop. They're realizing they only got a small part of your life, a brief chapter, and the rest of your story is being written without them. This realization creates a specific kind of regret. Regret about all the versions of you they'll never meet, all the experiences you'll have that they won't be part of, all the growth they won't witness. They're mourning not just who you were, but who you're becoming without them. The comparison between your thriving and their stagnation. The avoidance disturbance about your thriving is intensified when they recognize they're not thriving. They're stuck in the same patterns. They're having the same relationship problems with new people. They're still avoidant, still unable to sustain intimacy, still pushing away anyone who gets close. The contrast between your trajectory and theirs is stark. You use the relationship as a learning experience that propelled growth. They're using the relationship as another data point confirming their beliefs about intimacy being impossible. You're evolving. They're repeating. And this divergence in trajectories makes the avoidance disturbance about your thriving much worse. The avoidant sees that you did the work they're refusing to do. You processed the relationship. You examined your patterns. You healed your wounds. You took responsibility for your part and used it as opportunity for growth. The avoidant is aware on some level that they should be doing the same work, but they're not doing it. They're watching you demonstrate what healing looks like while they remain defended and stuck. Your thriving is a mirror showing them what's possible if they were willing to face their fear and do the work, and the mirror image is both inspiring and condemning. The avoidant also recognizes that time is passing while they stay the same. You're building a life, creating experiences, forming new relationships. They're treading water, maintaining patterns, repeating cycles. Years are passing, and you're accumulating growth, while they're accumulating nothing but more failed relationships that follow the same pattern. The avoidant is confronting that they're wasting their life, that their fear is costing them not just relationships, but time itself. The irreplaceable years they could have spent growing and connecting and building. Your thriving highlights their stagnation in ways that create existential dread about a life spent defending against the very things that make life meaningful. What you should understand about their disturbance. Understanding that the avoidant is more disturbed by your thriving than by your leaving should inform how you move forward. The best revenge isn't dramatic exit or cutting words or making them jealous. The best outcome is your genuine wellness. Focus on yourself. Build your life. Do the healing work. Pursue your goals. Create relationships that fulfill you. Your thriving is both the best thing for you and the thing that will affect the avoidant most deeply. Not because affecting them should be your goal, but because your wellness happens to be the thing that challenges their entire worldview most completely. Don't perform thriving for the avoidance benefit. Don't post on social media designed to make them jealous. Don't fake happiness you're not feeling. The thriving has to be real for it to have the deep impact described. Performed wellness is detectable, and the avoidant will dismiss it as you trying to make them jealous. But genuine wellness is undeniable. The avoidant can sense when you're actually fine, when you've actually moved on, when your life is actually full. And that genuine quality is what disturbs them because it can't be explained away as performance or manipulation. Use the knowledge that your thriving disturbs them as motivation to invest in yourself. On days when you're tempted to reach out, when you're wondering about them, when you're hoping they'll come back, remind yourself that the best thing you can do is focus on your own growth. Every day you spend thriving is a day you're building the life you deserve and incidentally creating the only kind of change that might register with the avoidant. Not because making them regret losing you should be your motivation, but because your thriving happens to be the evidence that challenges their entire defensive structure. Remember that even though your thriving disturbs the avoidant more than your leaving, their disturbance doesn't mean they'll change. Most avoidants will sit with disturbance, will monitor you obsessively, will recognize you were the one who got away, and will still not do the work required to be different. Their disturbance is their problem to manage, not yours to relieve. Your thriving is for you. Their regret about your thriving is for them to sit with. The two are separate. Don't let their disturbance make you available to them again unless they've done years of therapeutic work that demonstrates real capacity change. Disturbed and changed are completely different things, and most avoidants stay disturbed without changing at all. Your thriving is the ultimate boundary. It communicates more clearly than any words could that you're not available for the dynamics they create, that you've moved past them entirely, that they're no longer central to your life. This boundary is what they hate because it's the one boundary they can't cross. They can't argue with your thriving. They can't manipulate it. They can't dismiss it. They can only witness it from the outside, recognizing they're witnessing a life they could have been part of if they'd been braver. Let them witness. Let them be disturbed. Let them recognize what they lost. And you keep thriving, keep growing, keep building the life that's meant for you, with or without their realization of what they gave up. Your wellness is the most powerful statement you can make, and the fact that it disturbs them more than your leaving ever could is just confirmation that you're finally prioritizing what matters. Your own life, lived fully without them.